All right, class, let's open the case file. Every family operates off a script, right? It's this invisible narrative, this set of unwritten rules that gets passed down. Today, we're going behind the scenes. We're going to grab the director's chair and really focus our lens on those hidden psychological patterns that dictate our lives, often without us even knowing we're playing a part.
Okay, so this is our opening scene. Picture this. We push into a home where all the life, all the connection has just been sucked out of the room. It's been replaced by this quiet, suffocating control. The emotional landscape, totally barren. What we're seeing here is a family system right on the brink of total collapse.
So in family systems theory, we have this crucial concept. When a whole system is sick, the sickness usually shows up in one person. We call them the identified patient. They're the one carrying the symptoms for the entire family. In the drama we're about to unfold, that part is cast unwillingly to a teenage girl named Tammy.
Now, Tammy suddenly goes full emo. And it's easy to just write that off as, typical teenage angst. But look closer. This isn't just a phase. This transformation is a distress flare. It's a nonverbal scream coming from the depths of the family's unconscious, a visual protest against a rigid, unspoken code that is crushing everybody.
The chaos is rarely just chaos, right? If we switch our lens to analytical psychology, Carl Jung's world, we're trained to look for the deeper patterns, the archetypes. So we have to ask ourselves, what ancient story is playing out here? What powerful archetype is using this disruption to make itself known?
And boom, there it is, the trickster. The trickster archetype always shows up when a system has gotten too stiff, too repressive. It emerges to shake everything up. So Tammy, without even knowing it, has taken on this role. Her purpose isn't destruction, it's revelation. She is here to shatter a toxic status quo and force a change that's going to be painful, but absolutely necessary.
And how do we know this? Well, we use tools like this Kinetic Family Drawing. Think of it like a psychological X-ray. It gets you a look at the unconscious. Just look at the details here. The parents are split by this hard line, a clear symbol of emotional distance. And get this. The father is drawn smaller than the mother, which speaks volumes about perceived power in the house. This isn't just a kid's drawing, it's a confession from the unconscious. It's how a child tells without telling.
So to really understand the chaos that Tammy's creating, we have to trace it to its source. And for that, we have to turn our camera toward the family patriarch, a respected Christian minister named Mike. Because Mike is fighting a war, not out in the world, but deep inside his own psyche.
Mike is basically living a split life. On the one hand, you've got his persona, this mask of the perfect, righteous community leader that he shows to the world. But on the other hand, you've got his shadow, all the parts of himself he can't accept, the things he's pushed down into the darkness. Especially, in this case, his own sexuality.
So what do you do when you can't stand to carry your own shadow? Well, unconsciously, you make someone else carry it for you. There's a name for this defense mechanism, Projective Identification. It's a mouthful, I know, but it's crucial. Mike can't face his own repressed feelings, so he unconsciously throws them, like a hot potato, onto the most vulnerable person in the room, his daughter, Tammy.
And this isn't random. It's an insidious three-step dance. First, Mike focuses on Tammy, and he's terrified of her budding sexuality. Second, he interprets all of her normal teenage behavior as proof that she's promiscuous. And third, and this is the killer, he treats her as if she actually is, basically programming her to become the very thing he's terrified of. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And here it is, the devastating result, straight from Tammy. Listen to her words. She's completely internalized this projection. She is now living inside a character her father wrote for her, forced to carry the crushing weight of his shadow.
But here's the amazing paradox. Being forced to carry someone else's psychological baggage can either completely crush you, or it can become the very crucible that forges your true self. This is where the story takes a turn. This is her journey to find out who she really is.
Carl Jung had a brilliant term for this journey, individuation, and he saw a perfect metaphor for it in the ancient art of alchemy. Now, he wasn't talking about literally turning lead into gold. He was talking about something far more profound, transforming the raw, messy, lead-like material of your psyche into an integrated, whole, golden self.
And this transformation happens in 4 stages. First comes the Nigredo, the blackening. This is the dark night of the soul. This is Tammy's despair, her emo phase. You have to go into the darkness.
But from that blackness emerges the albedo, the whitening. This is purification. Through therapy, she starts to separate her true self from her dad's projection, washing it all away. Then comes Citrinitas, the yellowing. This is the sunrise, the dawn of a new consciousness, those first aha moments. And finally, the Rubedo, the reddening. This is a full-on spiritual rebirth. Her authentic self emerges, vibrant and whole.
Now, you don't just sit back and let this happen. You need tools. So, through Dreamwork, her unconscious center symbols, like a dream where she had to slay a vampire, a pretty clear metaphor for the parasitic projection from her father, right? Through active imagination, she could literally have a conscious dialogue with these parts of herself. And with expressive arts, she could draw and create things that gave voice to feelings that she had no words for.
But remember, Tammy's journey doesn't happen in a bubble. As she starts to change, she sends a shockwave through the entire family system. When you pull on one thread, the whole web vibrates, and this forces everyone else to change, starting with her mother, Sally.
For years, Sally's role was to be the peacekeeper, right? To stay passive, to keep things calm. But watching her daughter fight to find her own voice, well, it inspires Sally to find hers. She starts to stand up to her husband, breaking that old silent contract. And that single act of courage is the final catalyst that brings the whole toxic structure down. And this brings us to the climax of our story. And it's not a big, dramatic fight. It's something much more powerful. A ritual of surrender. Mike, the father, the patriarch, gets on his knees in front of his daughter. He finally sees his own shadow, and he admits the unconscious harm he's done. He takes responsibility. Then Sally joins him, acknowledging her own role in this painful script. She owns her passivity, her own projections, and she understands how her silence helped maintain the family's suffering. And this is the whole point. Through this incredible, radical act of vulnerability, the family finally gets to consciously rewrite its own script. The toxic cycle is broken. And in the end, the trickster, the identified patient, becomes the teacher. She's the one who reminds her father what truly matters. The therapist on the case actually wrote this poem, and it just captures the whole archetypal journey perfectly. You go from Zeus, the projecting father, all the way to a mandala of love, where all the broken, fractured pieces of the family finally come together to create something whole and sacred again. So, the credits roll on their story. But it leaves us with one last really piercing question. It asks us to turn the camera around, onto our own lives, to look for those invisible scripts we were handed, the unconscious roles we play, and to ask ourselves, do we have the courage to pick up the pen and start rewriting?